Signs of the Southland, March 14th, 2023. The two vacations were off a little bit this week, but you know what didn't take a vacation? Survivor on
Hell no.
CBS. Hashtag no free ads. Mr. Purdy, how's our buddy Carson Garrett doing?
Carson's made it through a couple episodes. Honestly, I mean, I wrote about volleyball and women's basketball these last few months for the site. This might be my favorite series I'll ever do. In all honesty, this show is the best. So yeah, Carson is he's the youngest one out there. He was 20 at the time the show filmed. He's 21 now. And you can tell he's 20. Like everyone else is quite older than him on the show. But he's got his tribe. They've gone to tribal council for the second episode. They've lost two people though because their strongest player hit their head in the literally 15 minutes after arriving on the beach, was bleeding and couldn't make it past the first day. So they're in an underdog situation, and we'll see how he climbs out of it. He's brought out his FBI investigation skills. He's hiding the fact he worked for NASA, and has the glasses to show that he's a nerd. So, the sign for Weber made the show for a frame as one of the pictures. So, we'll see how it goes. I think he'll be all right. If you're a Survivor person, you know that there's been talk of the winner's edit that exists to try and craft the winner's story. They've gone as the show has said that doesn't exist. So as much as I'm over reading into how his gameplay is doing and how he's gonna win, we truly know nothing until the episodes air. So
I smell a conspiracy personally. Of course, there's a winner's edit.
I mean, he works for NASA and is on Survivor. Clearly, there's something funky here. There's just no way there's nothing. But anyways.
Jack, I got a show recommendation for you and the audience. If you like Survivor, no Georgia Tech connection here, but check out The Mole. I think it's on Netflix.
I've heard about this. People have told me about this show.
If you crave the Survivor vibes, but you need to binge watch something on your streaming service, that's one to check out as well. Sorry, you said conspiracy theory, and then I was thinking about The Mole. And yeah.
So now we legally have to disclose how much Jake is getting for this endorsement. Now.
Goodness.
No, I'm not getting any money for this endorsement. We'll get the podcast business later in the episode.
We'll get
foreshadowing. Speaking of, I guess this wasn't really foreshadowing, but we had some particular opinions about the hiring and firing situation of a certain men's basketball coach that did not come to fruition. Wouldn't you say, Mr. Purdy?
Well, I had driven to Charlotte Friday morning. At that point on our Slack, we had talked about on our episode, we mentioned, it seems like getting rid of Pastner doesn't make all that much sense, just considering the grand scheme of Tech athletics. And then I get to Charlotte, I have lunch, and then I check my phone, and would you know, we don't have a basketball head coach anymore. And we're all having Friday afternoons while this is happening. A true Friday news dump, just a few hours early. If they had just waited 5 more hours, they would have been able to drop this with the regular Friday news dump and just not have it catch wind. But anyways, Pastner was gone, and we were like, oh no. We're here now, and a lot sooner than we thought we were going to be.
Yes, so Josh Pastner is fired. Resigned. Not entirely sure what happened there. I think it was definitely let go.
There was a Thursday night meeting with Jay Batt to talk about what the future possibly was going to look like, and by the next morning, he no longer had a job. Pastner, that is.
Yeah,
apparently, he's talked to Stoudemire based on that presser.
Stoudemire did say they talked. Yes.
We can get into that.
Hey! Spoilers.
In just a second.
Wait, we don't know who Stoudemire is. We haven't gotten to that point of the timeline.
Amari Stoudemire, the Phoenix Suns. They live again. And really. NBA Live 04, it lives again in my hopes and dreams. But if you want more instant reaction about Josh Pastner's firing, please go listen to the last episode in your podcatchers, Mr. Purdy's instant reaction show. So, Josh Pastner.
I'm sad. I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm sad.
I was sad when I recorded that too.
I get it, and I get why it's necessary. It's just such a foreign, different feeling than I'm just gonna say than with Jeff Collins. With Jeff, I was like, he needs to go. It's to the point where it's toxic and unhealthy for my fandom. Like Josh is a good guy, and he finally got all that horrible legal stuff behind him, and he won an ACC championship. And I don't know, is this where I call for them to build the Jose Hugging Passner ACC title statue? Maybe, but I don't know. Like in terms of like his vibes and his character, that will be truly missed. And I would be very remiss not to say something to that effect before we roll right on into the next one. I mean, Akshay, I know that you overlapped with Brian Gregory for a year, but in terms of Tech basketball, like he's the only coach I've ever known. I mean, perfectly,
Same.
basically more or less to the month of me signing up to attend this illustrious institution. It's just weird. It's going to be weird. And I think he's a nice guy, and that I'll miss. We can stick a fork in other things or discuss them at length as they respect to the new guy. But the old guy was certainly, and Jack, I don't want to steal your thunder here, so I'll let you say it, but I always found him very entertaining in the presser and all that. I'm not sure if it was your idea, but if you want to, if you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no, I was texting with a friend of mine who works at Tech, and my question was to them was like, you can't fully let go of Passner, because was there a better cheerleader for the institute as a whole who was more vocal and more outgoing about what the lifestyle was for Tech students that wasn't an actual student? And I just don't think no name comes to my mind. I mean, Career is one as well, but like Josh was able to like be emotional about it at the same time because he was playing an emotional game out there coaching the guys. And so it did lead me to wonder. My friend tell me like, well, he might do TV next. Just speculative. Just like, oh, that makes a lot of sense actually. As like just a couple of years of TV before coaching again. In case that helps repair his reputation. But either way, like Josh Pastner would be excellent on television. Like, who would not watch? I mean, for Tech guys that love Josh, like it wouldn't matter who's playing. We would have a fun time just being like, oh man, this guy's amazing, because he just genuinely loves everything about basketball and whatever he gets his hands on.
This guy's the greatest guy in the world. Most respect. I love playing with them. I love coaching against them. One of the geniuses of the game. That's his whole deal. And the fact is he's genuine about it. I feel like he do a good job of presenting that. And I feel like, I don't know, like granted, if everyone's the best, who's really the best? But I always thought there was good insight and good, clear respect. And that's really what you need from a broadcaster on a national or like an ACC network style broadcast. You can't just be a homer like that. That doesn't play well for anyone.
Josh will always be a homer for Tech in some way. I would hope, just selfishly. Like I want that guy to be or continue to be a cheerleader for us, regardless of where he is. But also, it's just
he'd still be fair.
He'd be fair. He would randomly start talking about space every few hours or so if you just let him go there. Like you just never know where it's going to end up, and it's always a fun little discovery and adventure to have with him.
Yeah.
So
I got my 2 cents in. Thanks.
You got like 7 cents in. Let's be clear here.
In there. We got dollars in there, man.
We're measuring this in pounds at this point, or pence. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. Euros. Anyway, new guy hired a very quick hiring cycle. I mean, It was Josh Pastner was fired on Friday. Damon Stoudemire, now former Boston Celtics assistant coach, was hired last night or yesterday, so Monday the 13th, and was unveiled as the head coach at Georgia Tech this morning of the 14th. Jack, I still need to pull up his playing career statistics. So tell me a little bit about that introductory press conference and some of the things that you saw from there.
Yes, I mean they did I sadly didn't get to go to this one, unlike how I went to the J-Bat one. But yeah, he was coaching in Houston. The Celtics had a game in Houston. Sunday night, one of those 2 nights. Was back and was here in Atlanta. And from when Pastor got fired, Kelly Quinlan and probably Ken as well were quick to confirm that this was only done. The firing happened so quickly because Bat had people in line. Like he had a list of guys that he was ready to go attack and go get. And I have to assume Damon was on that list, considering how quickly this came about. Other people were interviewed as well on that Friday. and they were Cabrera and Bat both went to Houston, went to that Rockets Celtics game, watched that game, and had the picture that's on the landing page of ramblinrec.com right now is them at center court at Toyota Center in Houston. And they were both apparently what got Stoudemire over the line. And let's put this in context. Stoudemire is a primary assistant coach for the arguably the second first best team in the Eastern Conference of the NBA right now. Finals champ, made the finals last year, very well could make the finals again, and he's coming here to come coach this team. The moment the microphone went over to Damon, he started tearing up. Like he was, this meant a lot to him that he's going to get this chance. Like I think this was, it's just from the body language, just how he treated that day, how he treated today of like soaking in the fact that this is now his new reality was big for him. And he was funny enough to mention, it's like, yeah, I'm going to get my ring if the Celtics win this year. Like, he was there long enough, he'll get it. So, you don't have to worry about that. But, I mean, he gave up a incredible job at possibly the best, one of the most well-run NBA organizations out there to come coach at Tech. And he saw the pitch that Cabrera and Bat gave him was convincing enough for him. And that he's going to have resources. He's going to have more resources than he had at his previous stop at Pacific last time he was head coach in college ball. That's for darn sure. So, we didn't get much specifics from the press conference just because, I mean, he just did get here. Like, what strategy or stuff like that, who knows? All to be seen. And he addressed the team earlier today, I believe, as well. So, yeah, basically, he's
Jake,
here. He wants to be here.
So, I just have a total aside on the Houston thing. I thought that I was going to do something clever and be like, oh, I found their flight or whatever. Because, that's what people do when like Tennessee fires a football coach or whatever. But the FAA aircraft registry is still downloading on my computer. So I cannot, in fact, look this up because, I'm just a crazy person like that. But I think it was all pretty quick. I think any of us would be lying if we said he was on our radar. But based on the pedigree, Pacific's a tough job. I mean, all those non-power West Coast, non-Gonzaga roles are quite interesting. And the University of the Pacific is fairly well endowed, the academic department, but maybe not so much in the recent sports success. So I think it's potentially something that has a lot of upside. And like you said, I think it's it says something that he's willing to leave the Celtics. At least that's kind of the first thing that came to my mind, not having a huge background with Coach Stoudemire.
Well, let me give you that background, shall we? He went to college at Arizona, played college ball there from 91 to 95. He was the 7th overall pick in the 95 NBA draft, selected by the Toronto Raptors. One last note on his college career, he was coached by Lute Olson at Arizona, a first-team All-American and finalist for the College Player of the Year. I believe that's in his final year of play. They went to the Final Four in his junior year as well. So a very, very well-respected player, very obviously a very good college player, ended up being in the NBA, played, 3 years for the Raptors, 8 years for the Trailblazers, 4 years for the Grizzlies, and then finished out his career with San Antonio. And then as a coach, started out with Rice as the director of player development, then went to the Grizzlies in 2011. Started out with Rice in 2008, by the way. Went to the Grizzlies in 2011. Went to Memphis, the University of Memphis, was with Josh Pastner there in 2011 to 13, then went back to Arizona from 13 to 15, back to Memphis. Actually, I think 15 to 16 was probably Passer here, back to Memphis as an assistant. Then was head coach at the University of the Pacific, 16 to 21. Left that job to go help out with the Celtics, and then is now at Georgia Tech. I will say for the part of the Celtics, there are some Celtics fans, who are quite upset that they are losing their, like Jack said, their primary assistant coach. And I think I was reading somewhere, I'm not entirely sure where this is from, that if He was in line for the full-time job when the whole scandal with Udoka broke. So,
Yeah.
very, very curious history, I would say.
Yeah, it'll be. Yeah, he's been around the block a few times. That's for sure. He noted he knows a lot of people in Atlanta. Like he was like, yeah, the being in Atlanta part mattered to him as well. To kind of throw back to the 404 kind of stuff. I'd be remiss to also we also should mention that he is Kyle Sturdivant's godfather, and they've had a relationship since he was a baby. He's known him since he was a baby. So Kyle being around another year could be helpful in that respect. He mentioned that Kyle would call him after games, and sometimes David just wouldn't pick up because he's like, it's not helpful for Kyle right now for me to answer the phone and baby him along, or not to be too crass about it, but just be overly not supportive, but just like be too much of a fallback option. Like let him learn how to figure it out for himself. I have no idea when those calls happen or how stuff went down or whatever like that. But just the idea being, Damon is somewhat aware of this program. Doesn't know everything about it, of course. He knows who Kyle is. He knows that the team has been through a rough stretch and isn't at the place it wants to be, which hence that's why he's here in the first place and why Josh is no longer here. And I think has some sense of the psyche of these guys. So he's not exactly walking in blind, which is good to know from a tech perspective, but is definitely not walking in blind from an experience perspective. That's for darn sure. As a Hawks fan, I'm very glad the Celtics have lost an asset and that he is one of ours now. So this is a double win if you're a Hawks and Georgia Tech fan.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a new era for Georgia Tech, right? And I think we have to also come back to that note about increased investment. I think Dan Wolken put something out yesterday. He put something out on Friday after Passer was fired, saying hopefully the next guy at Georgia Tech gets more support than Josh Pastner did. And then, as we've discussed earlier in that press conference, the institute officials made a big deal of saying, like, "Hey, we are going to support him to the best of his ability, best of our ability." And hopefully that's true, right? I mean, there's the press conference, and then there's reality. So we'll see how it works out, especially with a very competitive NIL environment moving forward. Mr. Grant, final word.
Yeah, I just want to say that there's kind of this overarching theme in kind of the corner of the internet that I spend most of my sports internet time on, or Akshay, I know the same's true for you. I don't know about Jack so much, but where there's this impression that Georgia Tech is out of quote unquote alignment. Alignment is tossed about a ton. And just in the conversations I've had over the last few months, as some of these changes have come down, people who are not quite as plugged into that all talk to the same point of maybe not with the word alignment, but things moving in the same direction between different parts of the institute and within athletics and, between the hill and the flats, if you will. But I don't know. I don't think that there would be so many people just randomly talking about this and comparing it to how it was before if there wasn't some sort of change, whether that's monetary or communication, because communication matters a lot too. And again, not to get too far down, because I don't know how relevant the specific details of this conversation are, and if I'm even at liberty to say much more than I have, but the alignment thing, I think, I don't know. I don't think that can be faked. And I think that it's something, whether it's Woken or maybe the boys at Split Zone Duo or, whoever in this sphere have kind of harped on a lot about at Tech lately. And I don't know. It seems to not match with people who are closer to the ground level on this or closer to the front line, if you will. Jack, you got something on it?
Yeah, I mean, I found Wolken's tweets. I did forget that actually they met with the Celtics were here last Friday playing the Hawks, so there was a meeting then that Friday as well, like that day, like that Fastner got fired. Sadamar was in Atlanta, and that just a mention of Wolken went on to mention that while he was at Pacific, they were under sanctions. They were under NCAA sanctions while he was there, and nearly put up a 500 record while there in a conference that basically Gonzaga owns, and there's just no hope for anybody else to get a bid without some hope of it at large. And that and just to reinforce what they had said, there was a frank conversation about resources and committing to getting things done. The Tech Way also has now been like implemented as like is running now. That's been I think JBAT's big thing since the Brent Key thing was solved. So there is more available to him now than Pastner ever got. That's for sure. Just in terms of getting that in place. So yeah, there's the path was set there for Mr. Stoudemire, and he'll have the best of one as we can give him too. So. Yeah, I think in terms of your alignment bit, it's hard to if you're not seeing all this day to day, it can be hard to like digest it all because Tech's not flashy. Like we're not getting the national attention that's gonna like make our narrative evident and obvious to a lot of people. So being able to see the nitty gritty about this helps, but totally understandable how some people may not be exactly tuned in to at the point that they would hope to be, but. Either way,
I mean, we're not the type of program to get a nice clickbaity front office sports tweet about a shiny, gaudy new. What the hell is Clemson building Palace do this year?
We got a good one from Ari Wasserman at the Athletic today. How he listed us as the top in terms of just if you just rated like the best recruiting places to recruit. If you got rid of legacy and record and everything, Tech would be number one because of Atlanta. Like we should be the top of the top destinations out there. We just aren't for all of the reasons we could go for days about. Go read Engineering a Program to find out.
It's great. Eat at Arby's. Moving right along, because I think we've done a little bit on the basketball front. Men's tennis has been off was off last week, but they will face Clemson and Boston College up next week. But the number 19 for the ITA rankings women's tennis team was in action this past weekend. Mr. Grant, they have had a rough North Carolina draw, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, just getting these four teams back to back is no bueno. Duke's number 9, NC State was number 4, and North Carolina's number 1 in the country with the number 1 singles player to boot. I think that's Fiona Crawley off the top of my head. Anyways, yeah, the match against UNC went about as well as you could expect. We got a point. Great. Basically, their entire team is ranked. Leave that one as is. And the one against Duke, that's close too, right? It's number 9 Duke. Again, Tech is now ranked, so we're number 19, so no slouches ourselves, but it played out as a 4-3 match. Tech wound up being off the board for most of the start. They lost the doubles point. Did get 2 points to make it 3-2 before yielding the one that would decide the match. The 7th point or the 6th singles court was in a third set. So they were wrapping that one up and it went in Tech's favor. But I mean, that's about, I don't know. You want to see a win, but I don't think it's really realistic to expect a 1-1 week against 2 top 9 teams. So I'm not going to give them too much grief for this. And they get BC and Q's next. So those 2 better be wins, and they darn well could be. But I mean, what have we been saying all year about tennis? Like it's the toughest conference. It's like playing SEC softball, right? Or it's basically every program is stacked, and that's something that hasn't necessarily trickled down yet, as we're kind of starting to see more of in like women's basketball and men's baseball and women's volleyball in terms of talent dispersion. But yeah, tennis is still really hard, and a lot of the teams we play are very good. So this was kind of expected.
What you mentioned those Boston College and Q's matchups coming up. What do those teams look like on paper?
Honestly, I have not scoreboard watched either team. I think the big thing to note about Boston College is they are historically let's say underfunded, if you will, in non-rev sports. It's pretty tough in the swimmings and the tennises and things of that nature of the world. But to Boston College's credit, they've got like 38 varsity teams. So I respect the heck out of them for that. They're just also an understandable competitive gap there, if you will, in terms of, their results so far this year. The season is relatively young. They're 8-5 though, so pretty decent. But their losses have come to Virginia, Florida State, Miami, Syracuse, kind of what you'd expect. And then their non-con has not been of particular note. Boston University, Stonehill, Dartmouth, UMass, Connecticut, Brown, Harvard, Army, and they lost to Harvard. But the Ivy League's typically pretty good at tennis, as is swimming. So yeah, with Boston College, they're kind of buoyed by a softer, if you will, softer non-con schedule. We can get to how that affects certain other conference metrics here in just a bit. As far as Syracuse, they're generally stronger. They generally recruit pretty well, particularly the foreign athletes. That is a team that has really looked abroad to Europe for the most part, at least in the past, and seen some good success there. They're 11-1 overall. Again, I think that's probably a decent chunk due to being buoyed by a favorable schedule. Their one loss is to Virginia. So, Virginia, again, very good. They did beat Miami, who's ranked, Florida State, who's in the top 40. But in terms of the non-con, Buffalo, Drexel, Delaware, Cornell, Boston, and JIT, it's not the schedule that we've been playing, if you will. But yeah, like I said, they're typically a team that kind of lives in that like 25 to 60-ish in the country neck of the woods, whereas Boston College is typically lower than that.
Good stuff. We'll have softball, swim and dive, track and field, and baseball updates coming up right after this short break.
I don't know why any of you would follow my personal on Twitter, but in the event that you do, you already know where I'm going with this. And if you listened to the podcast last week, you also know where I'm going with this. In that case, I'll get right to it. Tonight, I am wearing my Welcome to the Thriller Dome shirt, the first thing that I ever purchased from Section 103, because in the marking of the occasion of the new men's basketball coach, Georgia Tech is celebrating that, and Section 103 is celebrating with, I believe is it 15% off, Akshay? Yep. Yeah, 15% off through the 15th on the Welcome to the Thriller Dome shirt. What a perfect way to welcome Coach Stoudemire to the Flats. And certainly we are glad to have him joining the fray, just as you'll be glad if you purchase one of these fine shirts and have it join your closet as well. Free shipping on orders over $70. We'll talk about some other odds and ends, new stuff from them next week. But in the meantime, go check out this great shirt. I wear it all the time, and you should too.
Welcome back to Scions of the Southland. Mr. Purdy, you were in attendance for quite a victory over Auburn on the softball diamond earlier last week.
Yes, it was a fun Tuesday afternoon before third winter came here in Atlanta at the very beginning of the early pollinating, I'll say. We faced Auburn in softball, who was ranked, I want to say 16th or 18th, somewhere in that realm. 18th, yeah, 18th. There we go. Mm-hmm. And they threw I assume that has to be their ace, because she had thrown 59 innings with 0 earned runs and like a ridiculously high strikeout to walk ratio. And so I saw this box score, and I was like, or the lineup sheet, and I was like, oh no. Even though we're throwing Blake, I was like, she has literally a 0 ERA. Forgot her name already, but she had a 0 ERA in 59 innings pitched. First pitch, like the first at bat, though, was Emma Cal for Tech, and she roped a double off the wall after coming back from getting hit. Matt, what? You can't say that.
It's Maddie Penta.
Maddie Penta.
I was whispering to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. That's right. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I was very confident when Cal just bolted one off the wall after being hurt, and just showed she came up ready to hack and put such super solid swing on it. And then Nelliman was just mowing him down, and then kept it that way. It was 0-0 for a while. And then Reese Hunter had 2 deep fly balls that had both reached the warning track, but just barely weren't enough. And then in the 6th inning, is that when we scored? Yeah, we scored in the 6th inning. Got some small ball. It just took a bloop hit for Jen Soleo. Was it Soleo? I forgot who it was. It just took some bloop hits and finally got it down. And got the run in for her first, I already forgot her name again. I'm so sorry. First Penta, yes, first earned run of the season for her, which was wild to think about. Auburn also sent their radio people. I had people broadcasting the game for me in real life. It was really cool. And then Reese Hunter came up in the 7th, and it was just like, oh, this is her time. And sure enough, she hit one the extra 5 feet and walked us off 2-1 to win. So it was a great win. I saw something about like how high did Eileen jump when Reese hit that home run, and she actually jumped pretty far when we got them out in the 7th inning because Chandler Dennis came in relief. That was fun. So the pitching came together. The hitting did just barely enough. It got the big homer and came in clutch. And then we played Virginia this past weekend and kind of did similar thing, like long games, but eventually got the runs we needed them in the end of the series. I didn't watch any of these games, but we won 5-2 in the first two and then lost 3-0 in the third game. So got stuff done. Although we've kind of beaten up on Virginia historically recently, though. So I think these were games we definitely should have won.
I really wanted to see the win probability chart. Sorry, Jake, I know you have actual analysis. I really wanted to see the win probability chart for this game on the D1 softball website, but you have to subscribe, and now I'm upset.
My guess is that I think we scored first, so like it wouldn't have. Oh no, they did score first. Never mind. Yeah, it would have been like Auburn by in the 70s, and then down to like 50, and then kind of would have stayed there until Reese hit her homer. It was a solo shot on a 2-strike pitch too, so like. It was probably Auburn.
So they were dead, is what you're saying.
I think it was I think there was one out at that point.
It was a one. There was one out, and it was a 1-1 game. So I wouldn't say they were like,
It would have been more 50-50 at that point, but or maybe on Auburn's side a little bit, but not much.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if it was that much of a hope, but certainly a remarkable finish, and definitely one that's very, I would say, heartening to see. I am just verbally stalling while I'm updating the USI real quick. But I would like to say I called it with the Virginia game. I will say it's very hard to win a doubleheader, especially against the same team that you just kind of put all your ducks up against in the previous 3 hours. But a series win is pretty much in line with what we expected. Virginia's non-con was pretty soft, if I do say so myself. A 2-1 result is expected, and a good way to start because we've got quite the unfriendly lineup of teams coming our way in the next few weeks. Georgia Tech is trending in the right direction, I would say, at this point. They had won 6 straight before losing the second of the doubleheader, but in terms of like our overall trend, we're up to from the mid 90s into what's the number 53rd in our USI. So that's a pretty good thing to see. Virginia is kind of down in the muck with us now. But gents, did you take a look at who the next 3 ACC teams are on our schedule? Because you might want to.
I know the next one is going to be fun.
Yeah, the only one I have on my list here is the next home series versus number 15 Virginia Tech. So,
yeah, USI has them at 25, but I think that's a little bit low considering their strength of record and their strength of schedule of who they're playing. Florida State at the USI is in 14th, so no slouches there. And then you've got Clemson, who we've done the song and dance on Clemson, but I mean, they're a really solid program, and they're currently a top 5 team by any metric that you look at, whether that's Massey, whether that's us, whether that's, I assume, RPI. I haven't looked at where they're at in RPI. Wow, really? Did I click on the right thing? They're not in the top 5? Oh, that's strength of schedule.
I demand.
Wow.
Oh, my.
I demand that the Valchais graduate. We need a congressional investigation into her eligibility.
They're at 16th in RPI, or adjusted RPI. That feels a little bit low, but they're pretty solid there. In terms of the metrics, like I said, they see Georgia Tech as pointing up, but the midweeks are going to be really important the next 3 weeks. Gotta bank your wins when you can get them, and then steal hopefully 1 game per weekend. But I don't know. I think that might be a little bit ambitious, boys. Don't you think?
We'll see. Anything can happen in softball, I'm told.
I do want to say one other thing. Virginia Tech, they're sitting right above us in the adjusted RPI at 39th. Georgia Tech is at 40th, and Georgia Tech has the 25th strongest schedule in the country thus far, which is, I would say, pretty notable. It hasn't necessarily felt like we're playing, the Florida States and the Oklahomas of the world, but all of the schedule so far has added up to be, I would say, kind of a sneaky strong showing between Auburn and Wisconsin, Charlotte, who are 29, 30, 31, kind of jumping right off the top of the page at me. And of course, they're only going to get more when they catch Clemson and Florida State, who's 6th in the RPI and all that. But, maybe not a ton of top line. Virginia is pretty high up there too, but maybe not a ton of top line marquee names, but certainly one that's rounded out to be, I would say, a kind of sneaky tough schedule so far.
Real-time.
That's also what we said coming into the year. So, yeah.
Real-time follow-up to round us out. Tech beat Georgia Southern 11-3, run rule in 5 innings earlier today. I think that game tipped off at 6,
like
5.
Yeah.
Something like that. It was earlier today. But that result is also in. But it's not included in any of these rankings because it literally ended like 2 hours ago. So keep that in mind. Like we said, next series is at home versus number 15, Virginia Tech. That is this weekend. Tech, the good Tech is currently 15-9. So we'll see what they do versus their first tough conference opponent. Let's flip over to Macaulay Aquatic Center, Mr. Purdy. NCAA qualifiers. The full list was announced last week. The women are swimming this weekend at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. The men will be next weekend in Minneapolis, both on ESPN Plus. Who do we have for swim and dive this weekend?
We have, as we mentioned last week, Denise Ayrton qualified. She's going to swim 3 events, 500 free, 400 IM, and the 1650 free. She's fifth seed in the 500, 6th in the 400, and 24th in the 1650. So that's not bad. That's medalist contention. They put everyone in the A final on the podium for these events. So she'll hopefully make one of those podium photos. But the real medals are top 3. So let's hope. I haven't done enough research to see where she'll land tonight. Should have been the medley relay, I believe. I haven't checked on any of that. Kind of assuming Virginia set a new NCAA and American and U.S. Open record today, and probably will set a lot of them this week. So, and then the boys will next week. All of our Turkish boys are going to be in Minneapolis. So, diving wise, Anna Bradescu has got to be doing platform diving. She's the 6th seed so far on their sex sheet. So, we'll see how this goes down. We'll have all the results for Ayrton once we record next week, and then we'll have the guys the week after. But yeah, if you watch the women's meet this week for sure. If you're into that kind of stuff, because the Virginia girls will be there to absolutely slaughter any records in prep for Paris next year. Which, oh, by the way, I got tickets to the Olympics. I'll be in Paris next year, boys.
Woo! Exciting. Je voudrais un baguette. That's all I have to say on that.
I will. I'm sure I'll say that a lot.
I don't know how to speak French.
Don't get laughed out of any post office in Metz. That's a story for another time.
Not going there, so we're good.
Yeah. Well,
more podcasting for another podcast. The only thing that I'll say on this, because we'll talk about the men next week. The only thing that I have is on the Virginia swimmers. There was a wonderful piece in ESPN from earlier today about how that program has become a powerhouse, now recording 2 back-to-back NCAA titles and going for a third. It's on the women's side. It's a very, very interesting piece that mentions how they have a mathematician from UVA on staff that is recommending very small, like, mechanical tweaks that optimize their performance. It's based on a unit of account of G's. So it was a very cool read.
I mean, yeah.
Give me more swimming stats.
When you're that
Hashtag
fast,
analytics.
When you're that fast, yeah. I mean, just every single body movement to maximize efficiency and speed is key, especially with how fast they are and how fast everybody else is. Like, you can get those. That's a lot. That makes a huge difference at their level. So I don't blame them for doing that, and I'm sure we could do that one day.
Analytics,
would be nice.
Gotta love them. Mr. Grant, anything on the women's NCAA championships?
Not a ton, and I'm currently turning my computer into a potato, so I can't even click back to another tab if I wanted to. So, given that I have women's track and field and their schedule up, I would be glad to talk about that.
Let's go to the track. Hit me.
Yeah, so we've got the outdoor schedule technically released. I believe we already knew that Yellow Jacket Invite was coming up this weekend, but if you didn't and you want to go see some track in person, you got 2 chances, including this coming weekend at Griffin Track. There's also a home meet late April. I think it's the 21st and the 22nd. In terms of other items, there are some familiar ones on there, I'd say. Florida State and Raleigh, both their relays are pretty standard Tech staples. Georgia Tech will also head to Athens for the Spec Towns invite. They've also got the War Eagle invite on the schedule as well. That's also a pretty regular one there. Keep an eye out for the ACC Outdoors. That's at NC State. So great to get a run on that track and in that facility in earlier in the season before the middle of May. The interesting thing about outdoor track is that there's a preliminary before the nationals meet. So they will have the opportunity to earn that a la zone diving rather than going straight to nationals, a la swimming, if you will, or a la, outdoor track, all that good stuff. The outdoors are typically one of the last events of the year. So that'd be the 7th through the 10th, and those are in Austin. So keep an eye out for those. Like we said, Florida relays, I forgot about that. That's also a pretty classic one that they usually go to, and then they'll usually send a couple folks up to Penn for the Penn relays, which I believe is the oldest and most historic, or one of the two, either the oldest or the most historic track invite in the world, or in America. So pretty cool to see that.
Who made a decision to put outdoor running championships or outdoor track and field championships in Austin, Texas in June?
I don't think they thought that one through, buddy.
They do have a nice stadium. I'll give them that. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Also, additionally, who decided to put track and field preliminary championships in Jacksonville in May?
That one I have a bigger question with. Where are they even hosting that?
North Florida.
Well, I don't have a question about it's going to be humid as hell. It's going to suck.
It's too early to do it up north because it'll freeze, and then it's
June in the north is not frozen.
For May. Even May seems late enough. I don't know. I mean, it snowed at the Cleveland Guardians at Progressive Field during baseball season. What do I know?
I don't know.
Speaking of baseball season, you've given me a wonderful segue.
I have.
Let's start with the World Baseball Classic.
Yes.
Shall we?
Yes.
We do have a couple of Georgia Tech athletes participating, surprisingly. It's really weird
I didn't know this. I thought we were going to talk about the Classic just in general.
I mean, we could talk about the Classic in general, but the main thing that I want to bring attention to is that Harry Ford, former Georgia Tech commit and now Seattle Mariners system catcher, is hitting some absolute tank shots for Team Great Britain, which, number one, didn't know that they played baseball this intensively.
Aren't they Great Britain based off that the T that fell off the guy's jersey?
Great Britain. Great Britain, much like the weather there. And two, I did not know that he was British.
I'll note the rule that they changed the rule this year for who could play on what team. If you theoretically could have citizenship in a country, they'll let you play for that team, which is why Freddie Freeman is playing for Canada because his mom's Canadian. He doesn't have Canadian citizenship, though. So that's how they're trying to diversify the number of better players on various teams and kind of spread the wealth around. Even though,
there are only like 15 countries total that play baseball.
It's not many. Like Canada has Freddie Freeman, and then the guy that
they have Joey Votto.
They have
Votto. They could have Joey Votto.
Votto's not playing.
Votto's not playing.
Yeah, but they could have Votto.
The second pitcher they put in last night to face the U.S. and got killed was a single A player for the Braves. These teams are not deep unless you're Venezuela, Dominican, Puerto Rico, U.S., Japan.
I will say
the U.S. team is also a little dire on the pitching side, at least.
Yeah,
we also have a couple more alums playing too, boys. Brandon Gold is playing for Team Israel, and Jacob Esch is playing for, I believe, Team Britain. Right? That's on the top of my head.
Yes, let me double check.
Yeah. So that's exciting too. In terms of the American pitching situation, though, it is pretty dire, and the lists of notable people not on the team or whatever this year are, I would say, a little bit shorter on the fielding side because you got Mike Trout out there and stuff. But
the U.S. 1-9 is it's truly insane. I mean, the Dominicans as well. It is insane how good it is. It makes sense why the U.S. scored 9 in the first inning against Canada and then was able to pump the brakes. Because what else are you gonna do? Cedric Mullen is just walloping doubles in Arizona. What more do you need?
Whoever that starting pitcher was for Canada looked a lot like Mike Foltynewicz. I'm just saying.
Ulti. Poor guy.
Womp womp. We should at some point we should talk about Georgia Tech baseball. Let's do that. Right now they are up 11 to 9 in
Nine,
the
yes.
sixth inning. They are currently burning runs in a game in which they were up 7-zip earlier. So same old, but let's talk about the week that was. They beat Lipscomb. I think that one was a little squirrely, but they got the job done. And then they took a series win versus Notre Dame. They are 93rd in the RPI. Mr. Grant, you are up first. What you got for me on their week?
Yeah, I was at the game on Friday. It was actually a young alumni Yellow Jacket Club event. They, had that overlook thing full for football season ticket holders. Really phenomenal idea. Great to see a really solid turnout there. The game itself was rather interesting as well, in terms of like the actual game action. It was an early Tech lead. I think it was, what was it, 4-2? Yeah, I think or no, 2-0, and then it was 4-2. I know this is phenomenal storytelling, but I say all this to set you up with, Dawson Brown, who pitched really well first three in actually probably into his fifth inning of relatively successful pitching. Gave up 4 runs. Georgia Tech gets one back in the sixth to make it 4-3, and then all this is what I'm getting to, building to. The bottom of the seventh was quite interesting in that you had a Jack Rubenstein home run, some chaos on the base paths, a bases loaded balk, an infield single, and then a wild pitch, making the game 7-4. That's all she wrote. Ben King pitched 1 2/3, 3-hit, scoreless relief. Joe Manley, 2/3 of an inning, 1 strikeout, no runs earned. And then you had Terry Busey, who pitched a 2-inning save, no runs allowed, 4 strikeouts. Scary Terry at it again. All in all, interesting event. I would definitely recommend anyone with the football season tickets are considering it to join it. I think the membership just paid for itself in one fell swoop on Friday night. And then the game itself, baseball just kind of chugs along, and you're like, wow, I like baseball, and I've seen plenty of games, and then bam, all of a sudden you get a half inning just full of things that you've never seen before. So that's always a fun one.
A half inning of just straight posting, capital P posting.
Pretty much.
Mr. Purdy, anything to add?
I'll note Joseph Manley went in the game just now. He's getting outs, so the run bleeding may stop this in the sixth inning. Not that
the pitcher is getting outs.
Pitcher is getting outs. Yes,
I would recommend that. But I'm not the coach. So.
I'm told by analytics that is an optimal situation.
Interesting. More than spin rate, you can't spin rate your way to outs.
I don't think that's how that works. But I will say, in terms of other results from the weekend, they, much like weather all over the East Coast, softball played their Saturday, Sunday games as a Saturday doubleheader. My sister was in Durham, and they played their Sunday game on Saturday as well. And Georgia Tech and Notre Dame wrapped up their series late on Saturday, and those 2 games were a 15-2 walloping by Georgia Tech, followed by a they got the series after that, but followed by a 17-4 clobbering at the hands of Notre Dame for the Fighting Irish to at least claw back one game from the series there. Again, Notre Dame lost quite a bit of talent, and their coach from last year's College World Series team, but still quality opponent, entertaining series. But man, 3 very different games, I would say, between the 3 of them.
If my math is correct, that Saturday was 19-19 combined between the 2 games.
Yeah, I believe so.
This baseball team will never play a normal baseball game ever. Simply just never.
It's currently runners on the corners with 2 outs in the bottom of the 6th. So this
Ignore
game,
what I said.
No
about
rights violation.
Base runners.
No rights violations.
It's not going quietly into the night. Not at this point.
I told our producer that we would not do any more rights violations. Come on, we talked about this.
Aren't you the producer?
Yeah. So
Just putting it out there.
let's move on to some news and notes. This week marked the start of spring football practice. No updates really to report so far, but we'll keep you posted if anything comes across our desks.
They're playing
Men's
ACDC at practices, and things seem good. I mean, there were. I'll note. The Twitter did say that there was a noticeable tone shift from the previous administration's practices, if that means anything.
God, that sounds like talking about White House administrations. Oh, the new administration in the West Wing organized things differently.
I have nothing to contribute here, but I do have some hockey news.
Go for it.
All right. So I reached out to Georgia Tech hockey because I could not for the life of me figure out what their ongoing dealio was. College Hockey Federation is a relatively new ad for Georgia Tech. They'd previously been affiliated elsewhere before basically all of the SECHC went over to CHF. Turns out CHF, not really a thing moving forward. They're getting kind of absorbed into the AAU, as in AAU, like the basketball. And so I reached out. I was like, I can't figure out what this means. It says varsity all over this place. Are you guys a varsity sport now? Essentially is what I asked. And they said, from what they understand, that AAU hockey is still CHF run, but with a new name. Obviously, AAU from basketball, but apparently they also do things in other sports as well. And they want to emphasize club athletics are also varsity, but the student athletes are prioritizing higher education and just trying to raise status of club hockey, put more resources behind it, all that good stuff. It seems a la swimming coming under the U.S. Masters branding wing a few years back, but just the hockey AAU equivalent of that. So nothing we haven't seen in terms of club. I don't think it changes anything in their structure, governance, CRC versus the edge building type deal.
Speaking of that, did they update you on how their championships went as well?
They went 1-2 in pool play. I believe the first game was a 10-0 loss and the second was a 7-2 loss. So we can just let that season lie. Kind of not something I really wanted to spend too much time on.
Speaking of other club sports, men's lacrosse played a game versus Liberty this weekend and took a loss. I have nothing more to add on this, given the opponent.
We should go to a game, though.
We should. They're fun. They also get the band, and they play the horse after games.
Oh,
it's a whole thing.
I love lacrosse.
Horse on sack. I haven't done that before. That seems fun.
So I had planned. I think it was March. What was it? March 12th, 2020, to go to a game on a Friday night.
Oh no. The day after Rudy Gobert happened? Oh, no.
Yeah, and that was the night they shut down the whole world. I was at that.
Oh, dear.
I caught some parts of one, but that I haven't seen a full game since I was going to go that day. But I like I said, I have seen parts. But yeah, wild to think how much has changed since then. So yes, do need to get to another game. They're quite good, as we have discussed many times here.
Maybe not, because it sounds like your attendance of a lacrosse game is a harbinger of darkness.
There were no pandemics in 2017 or 18 that started, or I guess spring of 2019 that started because I went to a lacrosse game. So I don't see any connection. It really looks like you're looking for causation.
It's lacrosse's fault that they play during the pollinating. Like, Jake can't control that.
Yeah, the pollinating that turns my black car green with how much pollen comes out of the trees.
Okay.
Guys, we're not winning baseball anymore.
No, I'm going to turn off the live score. I feel like that's bad mojo.
Producer says no rights violations. We've gone over this.
Well,
anyway, I think that wraps it up for us this week. Anyone have any final notes before we sign off?
Nah, none of my fun trivia is really jumping out at me, so I'll save it till I got something that I really, really want to do.
Hey, I mean, it's this past winter is now a notifiably. This is a transition winter in a lot of ways. So we'll be looking back at these last few months. I think in a lot of ways between basketball and football, and just the alignment thing, and just that this is a very thick bullet point in the timeline of just all of athletics. So However the books get written, these last 3 months will be a hefty point.
I just saw something. Apparently, Will Wade has already been suspended for the first 5 games of the 23-24 season.
Yes.
Had to have had that written in his McNeese State contract. Also, Will Wade at McNeese State. Who knows?
Well, a lot of transition. We'll definitely be looking back on this in a year and definitely having a lot to say for sure. There, seeing that, gents, can I take us out? It's been a long one.
Go for it.
Sounds like we are good to go. In terms of places to find us, you can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. You can leave comments there. We put up other articles, all sorts of good stuff. You can follow Survivor content for however long. And let us know if you have any other tangentially Atlanta and tech related content for us to cover. You can also let us know those things at email from therumbleseat@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at FTRS blog. We tweet there probably most reliably of any platform, but you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. That's at From the Rumble Seat. You can find Jack and I at Jake Grant 98 and at Jack Nicholas on Twitter. You can find Section 103 at Section 103 on Twitter, section103.com. Go buy their stuff. Welcome to the Thriller Dome. It's a phenomenal shirt, and now you can get it even easier. As for podcasts, you'll see us next week, and you can find this podcast wherever fine podcasts are distributed. And in the meantime, good night, good luck, and go Jackets.